The Data Chief is a podcast for data and analytics leaders to share their personal stories and insights on technology, culture, and leadership. Welcome to The Data Chief.
Welcome to The Data Chief. I'm your host, Cindy Housen. Today, we're diving into one of the most inspiring data culture transformations. Joining us is Josh Cunningham, Group Head of Data and AI Culture at Lloyds Banking Group, an iconic institution boldly leaning into the future of AI. Josh is on a mission to make data and AI not just accessible, but exciting for everyone, from executive leaders to new grads. In this episode, we'll explore how Josh is helping Lloyds scale AI capabilities at every level, how he manages the hype and some of the hesitation around generative AI, and what it really takes to build an AI-powered culture in a regulated industry. Josh, welcome to The Data Chief.
Hey, good afternoon, Cindy. Wow, that was a fantastic intro. Thanks very much.
Yeah, well, it is an exciting background and story, and I can't wait to unpack it for listeners.
The Data Chief is brought to you by ThoughtSpot, the AI-native intelligence platform. Anyone can leverage natural language search and generative AI to explore any data, ask any question, and uncover actionable insights faster. Learn why industry leaders like NVIDIA, Hilton, Capital One, and Huel rely on ThoughtSpot to drive their business on data. Experience the future of intelligence at ThoughtSpot.com.
So, Josh, where in the world are you joining us from today?
So I joined today from the UK in South Wales, which is actually where I'm born and raised. So the weather's not particularly great today, but we've had some fantastic sunshine. So yeah, lovely part of the world, South Wales.
It is a lovely part of the world. I've had the privilege of being able to hike in Wales. I couldn't read the road signs. I have to confess that.
Well, I think a tiny part of the population actually speak Welsh, and I'm not within that, unfortunately. So open mic onto the border.
There you go. And Josh, you do have an interesting role and even job title at Lloyds Banking Group. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my role in Lloyds Banking Group is Group Head of Data and AI Culture. I mean, I'm biased, of course, but I think it's a really interesting role. So I guess context of it. So I've been in Lloyds around about 3 years, and when I first started, I remember when I applied for the role, and it was, I would say, probably at a head of level, maybe the only of its kind or one of very, very few. So the opportunity to grasp a role that, really focused on all parts of data and AI culture, I found really exciting. So it was definitely one appealing to me.
Yeah, and when you applied, did they actually have both data and AI, but also culture in the job title, or did you craft that part yourself?
Yeah, so I started in the role, like I said, 3 years ago, which I would say the AI wave probably hadn't started yet in terms of it being really in the public eye. So the role itself was actually branded as Group Head of Data Culture at the time. And like I said, it was probably one of the first of its kind in terms of having such a sharp focus on uh, data culture as we know it. So, they did set the stage within the job description in terms of roughly visionary, what kind of things they'd like to achieve. But, actually me joining, then I was able to flesh out that job description in a lot more detail, stand out what we call the data culture pillar of our data strategy, and actually map out what that looks like, and maybe to just give a flavor. So I hold data and AI culture in my head as three sub themes. So one would be data and AI talent growth. Now that's all about how do we grow our talent channels. So that could be experienced hires, but equally it could be graduate schemes, apprenticeship schemes, T levels, etc. That would be the first one. The second would be building our data and AI capability. Now that's not just for data people, actually that's for business people and leaders as well. And then the third part is the overall strategy and communications. Now, none of this stuff is possible without actually telling that story, without communicating the value. So that's really how we've defined data and AI culture. And I think certainly in the UK, lots of organizations have started to really thinking about that in the same way and create these roles and teams as well.
I think it's fantastic, Josh. And I actually can't recall if I've shared with you the framework that I use for assessing somebody's data and AI maturity and strategy. But culture, I probably 6 years ago, I had as a separate pillar. And now I've made it a band that is interwoven across all these aspects: the talent, the technology, the business outcomes that you optimize for. But as we think about culture, a lot of professionals and leaders in our space think of it as something nebulous. You know it exists, but it's hard to identify and articulate. And as an industry, I would say we often prioritize the technical skills over the culture skills. So I find it interesting that your background is actually in engineering, and yet you pursued this job that is on the softer side. Take us a little bit through your thinking there.
Yeah, so I mean, it's something I get asked quite a lot. If I reflect on my career journey, um, I left university and was always interested in the technical side of things. So I did a quite a broad degree which covered computer science and started my career in software development, web development, and found my way into kind of data engineering and then moving up into leading data migration and engineering teams. And my brain was always wired really logically. I love puzzles, love figuring things out, love deconstructing, breaking things down. But equally, I always, certainly as I progress through my career, I get a lot from leadership, from solving problems at a strategic level, but also um, really leaning into that people side of things. So building teams, building organizations, and get a lot of value from that. So I guess my career path was through the technical route, then into some of the broader data topics, data management, etc. Um, and then actually sidestepped into strategy and started leading data strategies for large organizations. I led the global data strategy for BP. And then when this role came along, which was, significantly about data strategy, but actually specifically in the setting of leadership, of people, of career development, of talent development, to me, it was absolutely the sweet spot in my mind of the kind of role that would really tick all my boxes. And like I said, 3 years on, it's definitely a specialism I'm absolutely loving.
Yeah, that's great. And you referenced your work in creating the data strategy at BP. How did working on data strategy influence your thinking on the role of evolving the talent pipeline and capabilities?
So I mean, it definitely influenced my thinking in terms of some of those earlier strategy roles, including the one at BP, where I guess more traditional data strategy roles. So you'd have everything you'd find in there you'd recognize, Cindy. So data management, data governance, data risk, data privacy, operations analytics, etc. Um, but if I'm reflecting on, at that time, what of all of that, what did I find the most interesting? It was always the people side. It was in the setting of data and AI, how do we break down career pathways for data practitioners? How do we really help to map the different skills? How do we evolve learning journeys for them? How do we bring them together, engage them, that sort of stuff? I think was probably because it felt like a bit of a gap and something that people often forget and is missing. And actually, really felt like I was able to deliver a lot of value in plugging that gap and bridging those worlds together of the business world, the learning world maybe, and then into the data and more technical worlds.
Yeah, I think it is a gap, Josh, and it's a gap at a critical juncture where the technology is ready, but the people are not. And yet, even a few weeks ago, I was at a Bloomberg Tech Summit, and the number one question was, okay, so how do we address this? And who owns it? Now at
Yeah.
Lloyd's, you own it, but I'm assuming you don't own it alone.
Yes. Yes.
Who are your key collaborators, partners on this side?
Um, yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question. So when I first started, one of the first things I did was I really spent time going around the organization. I think I must have, Cindy, had more than maybe 100 one-to-ones with lots of different people across the organization in every part of it. Um, First of all, to really sit down and collectively define with my stakeholders what do we mean by data culture, AI culture? What does that mean to you? What's important with data and AI literacy? What kind of things do you want to see from your practitioners, etc. Now back to your question, I definitely don't do it alone. So we operate a hub and spoke model within Lloyds. Each of our business units has a local chief data officer equivalent, data and AI director. Um, Now I work with each of those people and their teams, and most of them have got data and AI culture spokes. So in every business unit, we've got kind of friends and allies who we are going in the same direction with. And then beyond that, within data teams, really close partnership with a lot of the parts of our HR world. So our learning teams, our talent teams, our culture teams within the organization, focusing on workplace and things like that as well. And then beyond that, I guess the other bad thing I would bannering would be communications teams and group corporate affairs teams. So again, back to how I described data culture earlier, bringing in the data, the SME side, the learning and talent side, but then also the communication, the storytelling side. I think it's so important to bring all of those people together.
Yeah, and so you've hit all the key leaders that I would have guessed. Or I will often say when there isn't this role, the CDAO must partner with the head of people and learning, or I've seen communication, it will be part of the internal marketing. And again, there's a resistance like, wait, what? Marketing and technology? How does that go together? But it is almost an evangelizing, a socializing of some of these skills or new ways of working. So if an organization does not have a head of data and AI culture and they only have the CDAO, who would you say they need to be more closely connected with to make these pillars come together?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the people that you've called out in terms of those close collaborators. So I go to quite a lot of industry events, and I often get asked, what's the silver bullet, what's the secret sauce that how have you done it? And I describe some of the things that we've done, and often people respond by kind of what you're alluding to, which is, what if we don't have the budget or the investment or the backing to create large teams that can actually do this sort of stuff? Now, I think the answer is in your question, in that, the next best thing is significant collaboration. So even within Lloyds, my peers, we regularly meet with HR stakeholders, the learning director for the group, the communications director for the group that can help us to tell those stories. We have lots of partnership models set up. So either learning or communication or talent partners embedded within our teams and vice versa. And I think actually it's those kind of strands and that way of working, less about organizational boundaries, less about silos, but more about, we're all trying to achieve the same thing. So how do we write that down, articulate it, and then try and deliver it as a cross-functional team? I think that's got to be the way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I like that collaboration. And Josh, you've also said that your remit spans everything from graduate and apprenticeship programs to very seasoned leaders within Lloyd's. How do you approach building such diverse AI talent pipelines?
So I think my view would be, it's really important to start with your strategic workforce plan. So, understanding, and I mean specifically one for data and AI, not necessarily for the whole organization. So, um, yes, it has to be underpinned by the things you'd expect. So your business strategy, start there, uh, underpinned by your data and AI strategy, referenced to what's the strategic workforce plan for the organization, but then actually really tailoring in terms of, so what does that look like for data and AI talent. And I mean, it's a really fast moving market, right? So
Yeah.
what you think is going to be true, especially with AI now, in 5 years, 3 years, even 1 year, right? It's only your best guess. But I think starting in that is really important. And I think, if I think about 3 years ago when I joined, one example we made, so we looked at our workforce plan, and we looked at our pipelines, we looked at our hiring, and we said, we are just going to need much more data and AI talent than we are able to attract from the market. Every organization in the world is kind of competing for some of the leading talent. So we made a strategic decision 3 years ago to scale our data and AI graduate scheme significantly. So, back 3 years ago, I think we were taking on about 10 data and AI graduates for the group each year. And now, roll forward the clock 3 years to now, we are taking on 100 data and AI graduates. And we made that decision back then to scale. Clearly, it wasn't 10 to 100 in one go. So we did that over time. And we've been able to course correct as the market changes. So we've been able to say, okay, here's the banner of the scheme, but actually let's really fine tune and tailor what it focuses on. So more recently, this cohort in September coming will have a bigger focus on Gen AI, on AI tools, on building models, etc., than they might have had last year or the year before. But the fact that we are planning ahead, I think, is a really important thing to, do that horizon scanning, do that alignment to your strategy, and then really think about, meeting the supply with the demand.
So that was quite forward thinking in how you were looking at the workforce holistically and strategically. There is talk that there will be a higher unemployment rate for these white collar jobs, and that maybe organizations should be looking at, rather than hiring fill in the blank, a data engineer or a data analyst or a marketing analyst, it should be an AI agent that you're hiring. And we know from college grads, this is a tough time to be entering the labor market. So, kind of a two-part question, Josh. Are you thinking about what AI agents might you hire versus a person? And what advice do you give people? What are the skills that they need to hone to still be the best employee for the future?
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting question. And if I think about a reference to earlier, the 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 technology is moving so quickly at the moment in the AI space. I mean, you can literally go on holiday for a week and you'll come back and the world has changed. A new model has been released. It can literally re evolve the landscape. Now, I think we are doing our best to think about it holistically, and what I mean by that. So I don't think, especially for an organization as large as Lloyd's, I don't think there's ever going to be a silver bullet. So I don't think anyone can afford to back a single horse. So, what we are doing is, like I said, we're still significantly invested in early careers, in graduate schemes and apprenticeship schemes, etc. We are significantly investing in upskilling our existing colleagues. Now that could be in broader data and AI skills, but if I specifically zoom in on AI, what we're doing is really trying to make sure we take all of our colleagues on the journey in terms of upskilling. Now, key focus areas I think you asked about. So thinking about things like prompt engineering, things like AI literacy more generally, but even trying to find a way to match the training to tools that are relevant. So in my mind, I think every organization needs to find a really well structured balance in terms of training versus adoption. Or what I mean by that is, I think if you release loads and loads of training, but there's no real, no AI tools to use, your adoption could, you're not really going to get anywhere. But equally, if you release a load of tools without relevant training, then you still won't get that adoption, right? So if I use an example, if I think about within Lloyds, we have Copilot. We've rolled that up to, I think it's around about 20,000 colleagues now. And we've paired that with an initiative that we call Flight School. And ultimately, that's about colleagues. You've got this tool available now, but let's actually talk you through the different parts of the tool. Let's help you to understand, back to basics. What is a prompt? How should you structure your prompt? How are you going to get the most value? But then equally, specifically with each of these tools, how might you use it within your day-to-day role? And I think that's got to be how, we're trying to take our colleagues on the journey, as well as, more broadly investing in new talent as well.
I think the point that you mentioned, how you use it within your day-to-day role, is really important when we talk about technology not in the business context. I think that's when business people are fearful, and I would dare say we've made mistakes as an industry that in the past we tried to teach business people hard to use tools. As you think about how you enable business people to get more confident and comfortable with data and AI, what are some of the specific techniques that you've used to help them build their confidence here?
So I think in an underpinning level, it's trying your best to meet people where they are and make it real for them. So, finding a way to anchor the learning to something that's relevant to their day to day role is always going to make it land better. So we kind of try and take a bit of a two-pronged approach. So one would be, Lloyds is a massive organization, 65,000 colleagues. So we do produce data and AI literacy, learning and training en masse. So, here's what data literacy is, here's what AI is, here's the kind of things that everyone is going to need to know. But then what we also do is we pair that with, in addition, more bespoke learning. So we partner with each of the business units, or it could be with each of their business platforms, to say, what does the day to day look like within your specific area? And what kind of things do you need your colleagues to know within the context of their role? And actually, we found that to be a really productive way of thinking about it, because it means that each of the business units will spin up initiatives anchored to what's important to them. So for example, our consumer lending business have said we want to. So we've set a vision within Lloyds to become the most data literate bank. Now our consumer lending business are really leaning into that. They say we want to be the most data literate business unit within Lloyds. So actually their focus is their senior management layer to start with, and we're working with them to map out how do you get a curriculum that actually is going to really resonate with their day-to-day roles. But then, equally over in our insurance, pensions and investments business, they're focusing on all colleagues within their day-to-day roles as well. So how might we tailor learning that is specifically relevant to the insurance business, for example, and what do those colleagues do? So I think it's so important to actually have that broad offering that any colleague can consume, but then have the laser sharp focus on at a local level as well.
Yeah, and I love the competitiveness between the different spokes or business units, the insurance versus consumer lending. How are you measuring success?
So measurement, then I probably spotlight a couple of things. So one would be, if I think about our data and AI colleagues. So we've created, if I was to step back, we've created a job family framework for data and AI colleagues, and I would say pretty reasonably well aligned to what you, Cindy, would recognize in other organizations. So we've broken the topic down into 11 job families. There's about 52 role types within that. Each job family has a set of core skills, so roughly 25 with 5 priority. And then against each of those skills, we've used the Dreyfus model, so 1 to 5 in terms of the competence level. That kind of sets the stage. Now, each year we do an annual skills capture where colleagues can fill in, at what level they think they are, and that's a 360 view validated by their peers, their line management, etc. So that gives us quite a rich data set as a bit of a baseline to say, in aggregate, here's the skills that we have in the organization at what skill levels, and here's where we might have particular gaps. And that steers us in terms of how might we build learning initiatives that will really drive a difference aligned to our business goals, really drive a difference in terms of what we're trying to achieve. And we do that on a regular cycle, which means that actually we can track aggregate trends in terms of what skills are improving, what might we need more focus on, etc. So that would be measurement of data and AI colleagues. That's our biggest baseline. In terms of business colleagues, then, if I was to think about the skills uplift there, so if I was to think about our data and AI literacy framework, so we've developed a framework that consists of 5 personas. So we've always tried to to break it down in terms of the 5 different overall where people might be on the data or AI literacy journey. And that's things like, so you can go from data beginner through to data enthusiast, through to data and AI explorer, through to storyteller, through to citizen. So that's very much almost a bit of an evolving maturity life cycle of 5 different personas. Now, the way we run our data and AI literacy initiatives is we then work with parts of the business, work with colleagues to conduct surveys that will map either at an individual colleague level or a business unit level where we think people are. And they can, contribute to this, and they can self-cert, etc. So again, that gives us a bit of a baseline. And then what we do is we map a target persona. So to bring that to life with as an example, we might say, well, for this specific part of the business, we've completed a survey of 15% of the population, and most people are in the data beginner phase. And that would be things like, I'm a little bit uncomfortable about data and AI. I'm not quite sure what tools to use. I don't necessarily understand some of the key concepts. Develop a roadmap and a vision that says, on average, in aggregate, we want to get people to Data Explorer, which might be starting to, comfortable with Excel, starting to use visualization tools, starting to lean into Copilot, some AI tools, etc. So I think that kind of measurement, mapping the from, mapping the to, putting some metrics on top of it, and being able to track progress over time. That's how, on both fronts, with similar but different mechanisms, we're keeping ourselves honest in terms of the progress we're making.
Right. So I think that's a really good, solid set of measurements and progress on the improvements in data and AI culture, as well as data and AI literacy or fluency. As you also mapped the reason for all of this to the overall business strategy at Lloyds Banking Group, have you correlated any of this to the hard business benefits like increased market share, increased customer NPS scores, things like that? Or is that a bridge too far?
I think so. So there's probably not a hard through line we can point to that says, as a result of X, this significant board level metric has changed. What we've tried to do, though, is we've tried to establish, so what is it that is particularly important to us then? So if I wind the clock back to when I started my journey at Lloyds, for example, um, at a board level, it was recognized that we needed to do more in terms of increasing our data and AI maturity. That was a big focus. And we had various external large-scale consultancy organizations who helped us to benchmark. So we set that as a strategic priority, recognizing that an increase in maturity actually would help us with a number of other board metrics that we kind of joined the dots into. And then at that board level, 2 years later, which was a year ago, we remeasured that maturity, and we'd made really quite significant progress. So I would say less so we're able to say this specific metric is as a direct result of this training course, but actually what we do is we work with each of the business units to bake into their business roadmaps and their data strategies to layer on top. What is it that's going to move the dial for you? What are your priorities? And data literacy in every part of the business is going to look different. So, what we might need to improve or progress within a finance function might actually be really quite different to what you might want to progress in an operations function in consumer lending, for example. But I think it's important to tailor it in terms of what is going to be important to that specific business.
Right. Makes sense. Thank you, Josh. Now I'm looking at your background. So if anyone sees the video, you'll see this fun background, Data and AI Summer School. And Lloyd's recently won an award for your education efforts. Tell us about the summer school.
So, so summer school. Anyone who's spoken to me in the last probably 2 months, well, this is all I talk about, right? So summer school is South Then. If I was to step back maybe to last year, so it's an initiative actually that we've run for a number of years. I think about 4 years overall. Last year was where we really started to scale it, and it's something that we run over the summer, as you'd expect, so for a full 2 months. It's fully virtually enabled. So the other really great benefit we have within Lloyds is that we run something called flexible summer, which broadly means that during the summer months, actually colleagues can broadly work from anywhere, right? So no necessarily a need to go into the office. Actually, work at home, work from wherever suits you. Now we've paired our summer school initiative, linked into that by saying, so for those 2 months, we would love to offer significant learning opportunities that are open to all colleagues. So last year we ran it for 2 months. I think we ran about 160 sessions. We had more than 42,000 sign-ups across the organization for those sessions. And it covers, as you'd imagine, from 160, a really diverse set of topics, really unpacking the data and AI uh, specialisms. Now, this year we've set ourselves a challenge of going even bigger, even though there's a pretty massive numbers. So on the agenda, and it kicks off on the 1st of July, we have more than 200 live sessions. They're going to be hosted by internals and externals. So external is new. We're bringing in industry experts, partners, etc. And we're really seeing already the whole business leaning in. So the way that we've designed it and tailored it is, yes, data and AI, there will be some stuff in there for practitioners, and we'll have technical sessions, we'll have coding workshops, we'll have even virtual hackathons, and we'll get some industry technical experts to come in and talk about some of these really detailed concepts. But actually, we are also running an internal comms and marketing campaign to make sure colleagues understand that this initiative is for them, whatever their job is. So, it doesn't matter whether you've never touched, an AI tool at all. It doesn't matter if you think data's not for me, I've got no idea what it's all about. We have, really back to basics sessions that will go through data strategy. He'll talk about Gen AI for beginners. He'll talk about some myth busting about AI. We'll get some external lecturers in, some thought leaders. So really is something for everyone, trying to take the whole colleague base on that journey. And so as you can tell, it's something that I'm super excited about.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Like sign me up. And then 42,000 is an incredible percentage adoption. So congratulations on that. That's huge. And you also shared with me that you have a physical component to this, the data escape room. Tell us about that.
Yes. So I might have gone too early by telling you summer school is the thing I was most excited about. The escape room then is something that I guess I'm excited about that too, because it's really different. So I don't think I've seen it anywhere else within other organizations. Now, if I was to set the stage in terms of what it is, so we've had a couple of goes in the past at virtual escape rooms for data, at how can we bring this topic to life. And we really sat down and thought hard about, again, our target audience. And we have a high percent of the organization that does lean in, but actually, how can we really target the people who still think data's not for me? I just don't know. I don't know, or I don't want to know anything about data, about AI. So we came up with this idea, and it's one that we partnered with our finance business unit, our HR business unit, and we came up with this idea of creating a physical escape room, but that was anchored all about data and data learning. Now, how that works. So it's doing a tour all around the country in the UK. So we started in our Bristol office. It's literally a physical room that we built in Bristol. It was in the foyer. We're dismantling that. We're shipping it to, it's now in Leeds. So we've rebuilt it there, and we'll cover 2 other sites in our main hubs throughout this year. And broadly what it is, as you would imagine, we're not locking colleagues in a room, but we're putting colleagues in there. They can book in for their session. Essentially they need to escape, they need to get out. And the puzzles, the challenges are anchored to the data value chain. So there's these puzzles around, how you might source and collect data, how you might store it, how you might process and analyze it, how you might visualize it, how you might make some decision from that. So we take them through the entire data value chain, and we, in hopefully a fun and engaging and energizing way, and they're almost kind of learning by stealth, right? Learning by accident about data. But the feedback we've had from colleagues has been absolutely phenomenal. We've had such a fantastic adoption rate, and escape rooms is something that I think broadly everyone feels like, well, I could give that a go, right? I don't need to be technical. need to, know a load of stuff, but actually, it's really, really resonating with people, really landing well.
Yeah, it sounds amazingly fun. It makes me want to hop across the pond and check this out. Oh, that's brilliant. So, of course, our listeners will be thinking, "Wait a minute, how can I attend the summer school?" Will any of this be available for external partners or publicly?
Yeah, sure. So our big focus right now is the Lloyd's internal audience. We are looking at some of the summer school sessions to see, where could we publish those? How could we make them available to, a broader audience? Now, if I think about at the Lloyd's level, our organizational purpose is, our tagline is helping Britain prosper. So we really hold ourselves to account in terms of how do we do what's right for the organization, but equally for the UK, for the community. And actually, that is something that we're really looking at. How could we start to surface some of these things? And then if I think about beyond summer school, some of the things that we really try and invest in. So a couple of initiatives I'd probably spotlight. One would be there's an organization called Dig Data that we partner with, and this is a really great initiative that allows us to um, collaborate with an organization that helps us to go into a number of different schools up and down the UK and actually educate students on data literacy, what it is, why it's important. So I think there's a couple of thousand students that we've been able to take on a journey with that. If I think about our Women in Data partnership, so really big community across lots of different industries. We've got a really active partnership with them. So we have had a couple of examples of sponsoring their flagship events. We run lunch and learns, etc. And then probably the other one that jumps into my mind would be an initiative called Code First Girls. So it's about, what that is. Another partnership is about how do we actually bust some myths and really address the gender diversity balance in terms of, data and AI. The stats aren't balanced at the moment, but it's not a field that's should be so male dominated. Actually, we've got lots of examples in Lloyd's where there are some really fantastic female colleagues who are fantastic advocates. They're really passionate about how do we drive that mix as well. Code for Skills though is an initiative that helps us to really try and address that really early on. So it's paired with our graduate schemes. We sponsor the partnership. We run a 16-week boot camp for externals where they can apply onto the program and they can basically pursue a career change into data and AI. And in sponsoring that initiative, they'll actually act as a really good feeder into our data and AI graduate schemes as well.
Wonderful. So many choices. We will link to a few of those resources in the show notes. Josh, we've covered a lot of the great, impactful work you're doing. We have to talk about the challenges of doing AI and generative AI within a regulated industry. Financial services, I will say healthcare and life sciences, they face some of these same challenges. And you will have some leaders who say, just give me Chat GPT for everything, for all my data. And you will have others who will say, no way, I can't trust it. It hallucinates. We're not ready for this. It'll steal our data. We'll inject dangerous prompts. How do you navigate that balance at Lloyd's?
Um, so probably a couple of different things, I guess. Thinking about the regulation aspect. So, regulation. So we're probably one of the most regulated industries now. I think it's important to really try and find that balance. So yes, we have to really think about whatever we're doing with AI, how do we make sure we do it in a, that is really responsible, that we think about the ethics of it, that we, adopt best practice. And we've got lots and lots of people within the group who their whole role is to develop AI ethics frameworks, to really consider, we have ethics committees, etc. So whenever we are rolling something out, it's gone through a really rigorous process. I think, in terms of the products that we launch, so we're really trying to push the boundaries with regards to AI, but we're conscious that you've got to find that balance. And some of the things, for example, we right now are prioritizing use cases that are keep humans in the loop, that are
Mhm.
particularly focused internally and might really draw and drive benefits for our internal colleagues. Now, that's not to say that we won't have a focus on AI use cases that are customer focused, and towards the end of the year, I think we'll see some products launched that actually are powered by AI. But we'll do that in a really safe and structured and really um, cautious way, but one that actually means that we don't want to get left behind as a bank either. It's a really competitive industry, right? So if we think about some of the neobanks who are, known for pushing boundaries, I think as a big bank, if you kind of just lean into your reputation and say, well, we're a massive bank, so of course everyone's going to continue to use our services and continue to bank with us. Or, in an AI driven and AI first world in the future, I don't think that is necessarily enough to do. And maybe if I was to just touch on one more part of your question, which I think you talked about, how do you, if we think about our leaders and some people saying let's just point ChatGPT at it all, right? So for me, I think that's all about education. So really helping people to understand, what is this thing called AI that all of a sudden people have started talking about, because AI has been around for like 70 years, right? But it's only in the last 12 months, 18 months since the explosion of Gen AI that actually people have started to really visibly talk about it a lot more. Um, I mentioned that point of education. So we've got a massive initiative across Lloyds Banking Group that we've entitled Leading with AI, which actually focuses at the most senior levels of the organization and really educates that audience. So we're talking our CEO, our CEO's direct reports, their direct reports. We're taking that entire senior director population through a 6-month program partnered with Cambridge University that actually educates them on the nuts and bolts of AI. Now, it doesn't get necessary. It's not doesn't get into the detail. We don't expect them all to code, right, and build their own AI products. But what it does do is it really covers the transformation, the leading change initiatives with powered by AI, and actually helps them to understand some of the trade-offs and some of the decisions. So, why might we be able to use ChatGPT or not use ChatGPT in our organization? What are the ethical concerns? How might I deploy a model? How might I automate a process? Um, so back to your original point, I think it's all about education, helping people to understand, is it hype or not? Why might we be able to do these things or not? I think that's really important.
Yeah, wonderful. And as you're describing that, I'm imagining, and here's my hypothesis, is that because you do have high data and AI literacy, these different stakeholders can have more informed conversations about the risk and the rewards. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Absolutely. I think that's super important, right? Because ultimately, AI has got such a spotlight on it now that, the most senior people in every organization are all talking about it. They're all asking questions. So giving them enough information to be able to make those decisions, with that information, that back in their education, I think is super important.
And you mentioned, Josh, the importance of innovation because you also are in a competitive industry. And there was a recent article in the Wall Street Journal talking about the EU falling further behind for a number of reasons, but the article cited regulation, an overly restrictive environment. And the difference, I'll share a data point. In the 1990s, with the digital revolution, EU workers produced 95% of their American counterparts. And today, it is only 80%, with GDP growing at about one third of the USA. There was not UK specific data. Does this surprise you, or what do you say to leaders about this?
Um, so so I'd probably say I don't think it's particularly surprising. So, the EU has always kind of prioritized in particular safety ethics and, think about things like GDPR, for example. I think that's an invocation of that. And then if we compare to the US, I'd say the US is quite bullish, quite innovation focused, and I think that doesn't necessarily surprise me. What I would say is, every every country, every region, and every organization is trying to strike the right balance. And I don't think anyone's got the right answer. Obviously, if I think about Lloyds, and I referenced it earlier, but we are trying to not be left behind and actually trying to market lead in some of these things. But at the same time, we're really conscious of regulation. We're really conscious of the ethics, and we're really conscious of doing the right thing by our colleagues, by our business, by our customers. So I think every organization, every region, every country, every continent has got to really think about how do they strike that right balance. And like I said, no one's got the right answer. I think everyone will find different sweet spots that work for them. But ultimately, for businesses, it's just about how do you really understand, what you're obligated to do, what you're maybe to some extent restricted by, and then how can you work within that environment and that guardrail to still deliver value.
Right. Good advice. Josh, we could keep going here, but I'm going to shift to a lightning round. Fun, short questions. What do you enjoy doing outside of work when you are not immersed in the world of data and AI?
So something I really love doing is actually playing ultimate frisbee, which I think is probably pretty big in the States and in Canada, I think. But less big in the UK. But still, I think pretty much every university has a frisbee team, which is where I first started it. But it's probably more familiar to you, Cindy. But for UK listeners, maybe a bit less so. But I love it. A slightly different sport, slightly interesting, definitely keeps me fit. So yeah.
Very fun. How about someone famous or not famous that really inspires you?
Inspiring. So I think I'd struggle to pick probably a particular famous person. But if I think about, inspiring, it might be a bit of a cliche answer, but probably the people closer to home. So if I think about, my parents in particular, my mum, really fantastic, has always kind of, looked out for me, provided a really fantastic upbringing. My stepfather, super hard worker, really thoughtful, really kind. I think probably those people close to home who've really set me on a path that I'm proud of.
Good. And the music festival Glastonbury is happening this week in the UK. Who would be your favorite band to see, past or present?
Oh wow. So I think I would. I'm the kind of person, music wise, who listens to lots of different people. I think someone I would love to see and miss the opportunity in Cardiff actually would be Ed Sheeran. Big fan of big.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that needs to take off, I think.
love Ed Sheeran as well. How about a book or a podcast that has significantly influenced your thinking?
So one that I would say I found really quite interesting more recently, there's one called the AI Daily Brief, which met what I was looking for in terms of just wanting something daily I can listen to keep track of what's happening in the AI world, what are the trends, etc. That's what I'm finding really interesting in the moment.
Oh, good. You've added one to my listen list then. And now choose one depending on your mood in the moment. Either what are you most grateful for, maybe beyond the obvious of health and family, or something that has totally made you laugh out loud recently.
Um, I'd probably go with the gratitude one, and the thing that jumps to mind would be, I think, just where I'm based, South Wales. We talked about earlier, but I absolutely love, within close proximity to where I live, maybe 20 minutes drive. There's I think 7 different beaches, fantastic scenery. So being able to retreat either to a beach or to a forest within 15 to 20 minutes, love that. Really grateful for it.
Beautiful. Well, as our regular listeners know, give me a beach, any kind of beach anywhere in the world, and I'm there. So, Josh, I think we'll have to continue this conversation perhaps on a beach in New South Wales. But thank you so much for being on the Data Chief podcast.
Brilliant, fantastic. I've loved it. Thanks very much for having me, Cindy.
Thank you for joining the Data Chief as we explore data and AI leadership. To continue your journey, subscribe to our podcast on your preferred listening platform and connect with me on LinkedIn or X at BI Scorecard. If you are loving this podcast, please rate or review it so others can also discover the podcast.
The Data Chief is brought to you by ThoughtSpot, the AI native intelligence platform built for everyone to create personalized insights, drive data decisions, and take action. Learn how companies like Lyft, Brambles, and Avon are leading the way at ThoughtSpot.com.